Hello friends, and welcome back to Catapedia. The other day I hopped out to throw out the trash and you would not believe what I found. Someone was throwing away this big framed photograph. It just so happens that some of my walls are rather bare. But then I realised that this was a saucy photo. The type that I need to blur to put on YouTube. Well, okay, maybe it's not that bad. This is decoration. My walls are bare. I could use that. Therefore, I took it in. It'd be such a waste to throw it away. It's a great photo with beautiful light and shadows. But, you know, rooms here aren't huge. So if you have a photo like this, of this size, in your living room, it will definitely dominate the room. And I don't really want people to walk in and be welcomed by a butt crack. I guess that's probably what the owners were thinking too, which is why they threw it out. And I thought, you know what? I'll paint over it. I went out to buy the paints and man, I really wish I filmed the place that I got them, because it was this super cute, cramped, or as real estate agents would say, intimate shop with many floors. It's important to note here that I'm not a professionally trained painter. I have taken classes before in my early teenage years, and I did do it during high school. But after that, it pretty much just became a kind of somewhat expensive and time-consuming hobby that I occasionally partake in. And just in case you haven't seen it yet, here's a video of me talking about what they really should teach in art school, but don't. I feel like this entire process was kind of just me doing something and then fixing a mistake, and then making another decision and then fixing that mistake. But it was a fun and I think overall quite reflective and rewarding process. Started off covering up the bottom part and I did film it, but guess what? Camera battery died and I lost the file. I was sad. But it's okay, you can see how it turned out. I adjusted the shape, you can't see the jeans anymore. I don't know why I made these squiggles, please just put those aside for now. And then I went on to do the back. Now the back was quite difficult because I didn't have a reference photo and it's a real life being. So if you get the colours wrong, then it ends up being very obvious. I tried searching up a few references online, but it was quite difficult to find something that matched this look exactly, because very rarely do you see people just have a straight photo of someone facing backwards. So I was mixing and matching, and then I tried to make sure that I was also painting the arms at the same time, because otherwise, oh gosh, if your arms and your back do not match, unless there is some reason for it, you know, lighting or something, it will look weird. I did my base layer of the back and then the arms. I did find doing the right arm a little bit tougher because again, no reference. It's a very awkward bend. Getting the light and the shadows right here would be very important, but I relied on my imagination and therefore you'll see bits of red and blue and everything else. The thing that made it kind of easier than usual is obviously I had the photo already. So most of the outlines and the proportions and the sizes were already there. But once you put your base layer of paint over it, you don't really have a reference for the colors anymore. And that becomes kind of difficult. I do wish I could print out a life-size photo to help and put it on the side. And then I decided, okay, so I've got the base layer of paints all done for the arm and for the back, a bit of the dress. Why not start covering up more of the background? And I found this popping thing, plastic bubbles, super satisfying to pop them. And I thought, hey, I will dip that in some paint and then see what texture comes out. Because the really important thing for me here is to separate the texture of the background from the body. Since I only have a select few paints and brushes, and a lot of the brush shapes were quite similar, I was afraid that the texture would come out too similar if I just used the same brushes for the background as I did for the body. So I tried to use the plastic bubble wrap. It kind of worked-ish. The white bits that originally I thought were a great idea because it could be something cosmic ended up dulling the piece. Is that the right way to say it? So that's one of the quote-unquote mistakes that I ended up changing. And it took me ages to do this as well. Oh, this part. I really liked painting these parts. I was originally imagining her standing on some sort of cliff and looking out because, you know, her arms are in a really awkward position. What could she be doing? If she's standing at a cliff, maybe she's reflecting on something, and then stars and cosmic stuff, and then maybe some ice mountains, because I did Google some references and those were really beautiful, but it just kind of wasn't working. Even though eventually I ended up painting this sort of splash effect, it just looked weird that she was standing that way. She was standing in too much of a showy way. It looked like she was posing for something, and you don't really pose if you're reflecting alone on a cliff, looking out into the stars. You're more relaxed in that sort of situation. That night, I decided it would be a good idea to do something with her hair, so I did. It looks horrific. Horrific. Another one of those decisions that I made late at night that I will be fixing later on with lots of time. But alas, we can ignore that for now, and we're going to move on to the dress. I started working on her dress. I needed to give it a bit more colour, otherwise I was looking at the piece and it was just dull. Dull, 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 dull. That's it. Instead of mixing it on a palette, I didn't have a real palette, I just decided, hey, you know what, I'm gonna mix it on the dress. I really love how the reds come through that dress. I guess that makes the dress pop, because I really wanted it to be a blue colour, but then the blue was, as I said, too dull. I felt so guilty painting over this photo because it's obviously a beautiful photograph, and I'm just thinking, gosh, the photographer's gonna absolutely hate me. As you can see here, I have progressed to using an egg case for mixing. This is when I started to fix the hair. This was also at nighttime, you can see it's kind of dark. And I decided, okay, I need to really do some proper mixing. So I started creating all of the colors, because hair is one of those things. It's so difficult to do because each strand of hair catches the light a little bit differently. She has a lot of hair. I have a limited amount of colors to play with. And you never want to use the original colors that come in the tube because it just feels kind of dead. So I started mixing and I thought, okay, I'm gonna have a reddish, brunettish, slightly tint of purple, and there's going to be light around her. That's one thing that I knew, that there are some dramatic lights going on. And after that night, you will see that the hair was somewhat improved, but it still felt like I was just going over it with big brushes. Now it was time for the detailed work, the stuff that takes a really long time. I love adding on the white reflective bits. Well, not completely pure white, but color plus white reflective bits, because it really makes the colors pop. Once you see where the highlights and the shadows are, it just goes poof, suddenly it's three-dimensional. I started going in to some of the dark parts, some of the light parts, and eventually it turned out like this. Not too bad, not too bad. My battery ran out and I broke my charger. So this is the point where I had to go out to buy a charger. So instead of filming it, I took some photos. And for some reason I decided I wanted to paint bubbles. Like popping bubbles. Again, this was one of those times where I was painting at night. It's always when I'm painting at night that these weird ideas just come to mind. But again, it just felt like it didn't really match the story. So I made them into the camera flashes. At least that's what I had them as in my mind. And then I decided, you know what? What if she is some celebrity or a person that's about to perform, and you see all of these camera flashes in front of her that could be mistaken for stars? You have some scars on her back, the reason behind which is up to you to decide. I remember thinking that, okay, these stars, good idea, but they don't look wow enough. They are not spreading far enough in the picture. So I had to spend another night doing very detailed, thin work with a not so thin brush to extend the light lines of these flashes. I actually quite like what the result was. It looks quite vibrant, quite colourful. It's kind of starry, but you can also read into it. Will I be doing this again? Well, considering how I have managed to dirty my desk, my window, and also the window ledge that I sat on, it's really bad for the back as well. I didn't have a proper easel set up or anything. I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna wing it this time. I don't have that stuff in Hong Kong. But it really makes your back hurt. So maybe not something this size, but if it's something smaller, something that I can work on maybe at a desk, then yeah, why not? What are your thoughts? Have you ever painted over a photo and felt so guilty? And how do you get your inspiration? Because I found that the hardest part for this was that I had to make a creative decision whilst I was doing it, as opposed to having everything pre-planned. And there's no reference photo, as I said before. Everything is sort of spur of the moment. Anywho, this is what it was, and this is what it is now. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye!